Welcome to this episode of the Sports Detective Podcast Show. My name is James Williams, and today we are talking about Bronny James. Why are we talking about Bronny? Well, over the weekend, ESPN kind of updated their mock drafts and their big boards, and someone was very much notably not listed as a drafted player and actually was listed as undrafted, and that player was Bronny James. I'll go ahead and show you guys this tweet here. It's from Basketball Forever. Bronny James is projected to go undrafted in ESPN's latest 2024 NBA mock draft. He is averaging 5.6 points per game, 2.8 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game, and he is shooting 36.4% of a field goal percentage. Now, he's also didn't have that here too. He's also averaging I think 28% from the 3-point line and about 65% from the free throw line. So he's also averaging 20 minutes a game. So necessarily the 5, 2 and 2 or 2.5 and 2 doesn't necessarily concern me because we've seen players, whether they are from overseas or whether they are college players, be bench players that don't necessarily have the most eye-popping stat sheet get drafted. We have seen that before. That isn't an oddity. With that being said, though, the thing that most concerns me about those Bronny stats there, if you're talking about draft projections, is that field goal percentage. Because if you're shooting under 40% in college, in the Pac-12, under 30% from three, and very importantly here too, 65% from the free throw line, what are you going to do in the NBA? The reason I point out the free throw percentage there, guys, is because when NBA scouts look at college stats and they're trying to project out a player as an NBA player, what they do when they try to project hey, how good of a shooter is this guy going to be? They don't necessarily the research has found that necessarily looking at their 3-point percentage isn't necessarily the best barometer. The best barometer is actually their free throw percentage. So if you look at 65% from the free throw line, that's a little bit rough here. And we did a video on this about Bronny about a month ago. And my big picture point was, hey, I don't think he's ready for the NBA. I don't think he's ready yet. That's not to say that he won't be, but I kind of look at Bronny as a prospect. And first off, before I even get to that part, I'll give you kind of the defense of what people would say. And what people even commented in that video was kind of hey, Bronny's a team first player. He's not necessarily a guy that's concerned about stats. He's just trying to fit in with the team. If you listen to the optimistic guys that are talking about his prospects as a player, they say, hey, he's a connector. He's not necessarily going to be the ball handler, and he's not necessarily going to be a high volume shooter. So that's kind of Bronny as a player. But if we're getting realistic about this, he's 6'4", which means he's I think if you're doing the NBA today, if you just look around the NBA, if you're not 6'5" and you're a guard, you're kind of undersized. You're kind of undersized, and it's okay to be undersized. That's okay. Undersized players can be very valuable to NBA teams. They can make a lot of money in the NBA, and they can also contribute to winning in the NBA. But if you're undersized, I think you need to have some sort of you have to be very, very good at a lot of things, or you have to be, have some sort of elite skill. So someone like Trae Young, just the offensive ability and playmaking, the shooting, that's his elite skill. Someone like Javon Carter, who's a role player on the Bulls right now. He's just an A+ defender. Somebody like Chris Paul, his, floor general skills and his overall package really helped him out in the NBA. And I'm not even talking about I know I just point out Hall of Fame level players. Not to say Trae Young definitely has some work to go to get the Hall of Fame. Just disregard that point there. But we're just talking about Bronny just becoming an average player. And I'm just looking at him, and he doesn't necessarily he's not necessarily a playmaker. He's not necessarily a shooter. I don't know how good of he is as a defender, but I don't think he's necessarily an ace defender right now at 18, 19 years old. So what is he? And I think he's just a guy right now. And again, that does not to say that, players develop at different times. Different people develop at different times. Someone like his dad is a person that developed very early on. And he probably could have played in the NBA when he was 16. There are other people, I'll give you an example of, and I mean, we've seen, in crazy developmental stories, throughout NBA history, especially over the last few years. But one that I saw personally was Buddy Hield, because if you guys don't know this about me, this is your first time watching me. My experience is, I live in Iowa, watch a lot of Big 12 basketball, and Buddy Hield, watching him like the first few years at Oklahoma, you're kind of like, oh, I don't know about this guy. He's playing a lot, but I swear like one game against Iowa State, he missed like 12 like terrible, or he missed a lot of like bad 3-pointers. Then the next year he comes back his senior year, um, is a national player of the year, and ends up like playing his way, gets his team to the Final Four, and becomes a lottery pick. And he's been a pretty good NBA player, an average NBA player, made a lot of money in the NBA, as being an elite shooter. So that's an example. Like, people develop differently. And why are we talking about this? Because if this was just a normal NBA prospect that had like a high, college pedigree or high school pedigree, and then got to the point where it's like we're looking at draft projections, having a little bit underwhelming freshman season, we're kind of looking at that and we're just like, okay, like I probably wouldn't be doing a video about that. So why are we talking about this? Well, one, it's because obviously his name, and two, it's his dad, because I think kind of the big picture thing of all of this is we, for the first time, I think in maybe like over a decade with LeBron, we don't know what he's going to do after this offseason. We do not know what he is going to do after this offseason. Because, I think when he was getting ready to leave for Cleveland, it was kind of like, oh, he's either going to stay in Cleveland or he might go to Miami. It seemed like it was pretty obvious something like that was going to happen. Then when he was going to leave Miami, it was like, all right, if he leaves, he's going to Cleveland. That's where he's going. And then it was like, after he left Cleveland again, it was like, all right, he's going to the Lakers. But right now, LeBron has a player option. We just came off an entire weekend where he was flirting with the New York Knicks. And we know that he has said in the past, now I've always thought this point was ridiculous, and I'll explain why here in a second, that LeBron wanted to play on the same team as his son. And he wanted to be in the NBA, and it would be a very, big moment for him. And he said it was a goal of his to be on the same court with his son. And, he basically alluded to it to being on the same team. Now, I always thought that point was kind of like, stupid, because it's like, if the Pistons would have drafted him, would he really go to the Pistons? Would he really go to the the Wizards? So I always thought the idea of like whatever team drafts Bronny, LeBron's going to go to, peculiar thing. So right now, the fact that Bronny's drafted, in a way, you could say it actually kind of helps, because if Bronny did go out, no one would want to draft him because maybe he's not good enough, and then maybe like Bronny is just like this Thanasis to Giannis figure for whatever team LeBron decides to go to, whether that's the Lakers or whether that gets the Knicks or whatever team that may go to. But it's kind of like concerning here too, guys, because like, does he go to the G League? Like, does he transfer? It's a very kind of odd situation here, because I think he could use at least a few more years in college. Maybe he needs to use all four. And, I don't know what he should do. I think he should stay. I'm a believer of guys can actually like develop and become good basketball players in college. I don't think you have to like jump like right after 1 year, even if you're projected to be a second round pick or undrafted, to just jump and then jump into that G League environment, because I think that G League environment's, a little tough. I think it works for some people. I also think some people it helps, being a 20-year-old kid around other 20-year-old kids in a college environment. And, I think sometimes, like right now, guys, the G League Ignite is 1 in 17. Like, that is the record. And I think some of those younger kids on that team, I think it would be very beneficial to them if they were like, playing intense Big 10 or SEC or Big 12 or ACC basketball, rather than playing in front of empty gyms and like, smaller US cities. So there you have it, guys. Bronny projected to go undrafted. What does this mean for Bronny? Does he still try to go out and, go to the NBA combine and maybe somebody bites on him? Should he stay in college for a few more years? Just let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you got to this point, if you like this video, hit that like button. If you like content like this, hit that subscribe button. Maybe go ahead and explore the Sports Detective podcast channel a little bit more. Maybe you'll find a few other videos that you'll like. We've been doing this show for a few years now, but it was mainly audio. And now, just like the last like month and a half, 2 months, we've finally started putting little clips like this on a YouTube. So if you could hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, check out more stuff on the channel. It really helps us out big time, the algorithm, and helps us grow. So thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you next time.